5 minutes to get through. So we'll see how we're feeling this morning, and there you go. But before we get started, we'll say a prayer, and then we'll read that section. Dear Lord, Heavenly Father, we thank you for an opportunity to learn more about you, learn more about your word, and learn more about your will for our lives. We ask that you use this time to bless our faith and bolster our knowledge of how you work in your world. All these things we ask in the holy precious name of Jesus. Amen. Okay, so Genesis chapter 25, starting with verse 29. Esau selling his birthright. Once, when Jacob was cooking stew, Esau came in from the field, and he was exhausted. And Esau said to Jacob, "Let me eat some of the red stew, for I am exhausted." Therefore his name was called Edom. Jacob said, "Sell me your birthright now." Esau said, "I am about to die. Of what use is a birthright to me?" Jacob said, "Swear to me now." So he swore to him and sold his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau bread and lentil stew, and he ate and drank and rose and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright. Well, what do we think?
So we follow the line. Esau's not part of that line.
Okay, so Esau is not demonstrating skills that we would want to be our patriarch, right? And so he, by despising his birthright, is going to now be outside of the blessing of Abraham.
Why did
Good.
he think he was gonna die? I'm about
Why,
to die.
why does he think he's gonna die?
Did he
Like,
work
is
in-
this kind of, hyperbole? Maybe what, can you imagine him, like we've all dealt with, "Oh, I'm dying of hunger." No, you're not. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't know how dramatic Esau was after coming home from a hunt.
Jacob wasn't too good either.
Pardon?
Jacob wasn't too nice either.
Jacob was not kind either. Okay? So we can say whatever we want about Esau, but Jacob is not being good either. How is Jacob being bad specifically?
He's-
Right, I mean, when you read it, it sounds like Jacob's, like, being kind of rude, right? "Give me some of that red stew, for I am exhausted." Jacob said, "Sell me your birthright now." Like, that's just kind of,
Being greedy.
greedy, but it doesn't fit,
Right.
right? Like, it's not an equal match. And so we're like, okay, Jacob, are you just taking advantage of the situation, which is not something that we're called to do? Are you just being a mean brother, which is not what we're called to do? Like, what's another way to explain that?
He's
Me-
being a brat.
He's being a brat. I mean, if you really think about it, they both are being brats.
Yes.
Right? Like, this is brotherly love? Not so much.
Well, the parents had driven a wedge between them right from the start. And he's picking a favorite.
Okay, good.
And so all their life growing up, they've never had anything basically in common.
Right.
And so, and Jacob being a deceiver,
Good.
he's a lot smarter than his brother. And he's
Yeah.
just this guy probably hanging around waiting to see, if something happens, he jumps in and takes advantage of it.
Uh-huh.
It's his nature.
This is Jacob's nature, is to do this. And
Makes you wonder where Jacob got his meat for the stew. Did he go
that's what I'm saying. I've thought about that too, right? So Esau is supposed to be this great hunter, and he comes back from the field exhausted with nothing, and Jacob already has some meat in a pot cooking. So who's the smart one now, mister? Right?
go down to the local store? and
Right.
buy it?
Go down the local tent down the way and pick up your meat. I don't know. Right?
It's probably Esau's meat to begin with.
Maybe Esau, maybe he took it from Esau. It doesn't say. You don't know.
I mean,
Good point.
Maybe it was in their
I
icebox.
mean, a whole deer doesn't just disappear that quick.
I don't know.
Maybe there's, because they had favorites, maybe his mother is kind of in on this. I mean, generally, did the men get, do all the cooking? I mean, I know Jacob cooked it, but
No.
maybe there's a little bit of a whisper in an ear, maybe?
It is odd that Jacob is cooking
Yeah.
a stew. Yeah. Unless you're a shepherd with your flocks and you need to eat something for days, the men aren't going to be cooking a stew over a fire.
So the prosecuting attorney would say that shows premeditation.
I believe you are right. And it's a good thing that I'm not an attorney. Good. These are really good thoughts. Val, did you have something that you wanted to add before? No? Anything else in this section?
What do you suppose constitutes a birthright?
Excellent question. Okay, so in a couple chapters, I believe chapter 27, yeah, we have the blessing, okay? So it kind of makes us have to think about what's the difference between a birthright and a blessing, because they happen at two separate times, they seem to be two different things. We really haven't really covered a birthright yet in Genesis, have we? I don't think so. So, just off the top of your head, what makes sense for a birthright?
It's going to be the eldest of the male children.
Yeah.
Everything was all the major,
All the assets.
yes, thank you for
The
that.
assets, good.
That would all fall to him, and then any younger brother after
Okay,
that, then
good.
it's gonna.
So the Old Testament, the way that the Old Testament talks about this is that it uses the phrase a double portion. So it's not like the other kids don't get anything, just the firstborn who has the birthright is going to get double what all of the other kids get. Okay?
It's a male.
As usually it's a male. I would say 97% of the time. Okay, so we have this double portion, which is the birthright. But this double portion of everything that Isaac's going to have, or that Jacob's going to receive, or what Esau is supposed to receive, what are these things we're talking about? What are the assets?
Well, the house, the lot,
The tents,
all their contract.
the flocks, the land,
The slaves or servants?
slaves, yeah, money, power, whatever goods you have.
So the guy dumps it for a bowl of stew.
So the guy dumps it for a bowl of stew.
How valuable is,
Okay,
must be really good stew.
it must be the best stew you've ever had, right? Have you ever, I think we were actually talking about this the other day. What's the most expensive meal you've ever had? Right? Where you pay all of this money and you're like, this better be the best steak I've ever had in my life for how much this is, right? It's all happened to us at least once. Where you get the bill and you're like, what? It wasn't worth that. You know what I mean? So all of this, well, okay, now, and what kind of stew is it?
Meat.
Lentil, so it's got some meat and some lentils in it.
Red stuff.
Red lentils. Okay? So if you were to put a price on a lentil,
There's some bread in there.
what would that it's like
Just 99 cents.
it's less than a cent. Right? You can get a whole bag of lentils for what? Like $1? But it's like a 3-pound bag of lentils for $1. It's like lentils don't cost anything. Okay? And so he's giving up all of this stuff for, like, it's not even cabbage stew. You know what I mean? It's like the lowest of the lowest of the stews. Okay? So what, okay, so there's that, like, we just kind of throw that out there. Okay? So what does that really say about Esau then? That kind of puts the last sentence in perspective a little bit more. Okay? Esau despised his birthright.
He didn't think much of everything that is.
So either Esau didn't think of anything that Isaac had to give him, or he was just really mad that he gave it up for some stew. Either way, he should be upset, right? So what does, again, like, let's put this in a different mindset. What does that really say about Esau?
Maybe he don't care about money.
Be a little bit more
Godless.
godless. I like that.
You'd rather hunt.
The boy just wants to hunt. Let the boy go hunt. He's not going to have any land to hunt on. He's not going to have any goods to buy anything to hunt with. But, like, he just wants to be out in the field, and apparently he's not even good at that because he comes home with nothing. Okay? So Esau, like, he's kind of like a downer of a guy, right? Now, I like the way that you said godless, because that's not the way that we're told in the Bible, that we've read in the Bible, that we're supposed to respect the blessings that God has given us. However, we also have to look on it on the flip side too. What does any of this have to do with God?
Nothing. Can I read what my notes say?
Ooh,
Not
the
commentary.
study Bible. All right, go ahead.
In doing so, he proved himself to be God, quote, godless, since at the heart of the birthright were the covenant promises that Isaac had inherited from Abraham.
Yes. So all this stuff is what Isaac received from Abraham. It's all the blessing from God. Right? I'm going to argue against what that said. Okay? Because I disagree with it. Because to me, the birthright is the double portion and all of this stuff. I'm going to argue that all of this stuff is stuff. Right? That all of this stuff is like worldly stuff. It's earthy stuff. Right? That doesn't mean it's not important. That doesn't mean it's not a blessing from God. But in chapter 27, when Jacob gets the blessing from Isaac, we're going to have this blessing here, which I'm going to contrast with the birthright. Right? The blessing is going to be the covenant promise. And the birthright is the stuff. Okay? Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
It's the opposite of what you said. But that's okay.
You can't take it with you.
You can't take it with you as much as we like to think that we can. Right?
So Esau is smart enough to realize that stuff actually owns you. And not the other way
I
around.
don't think Esau's smart at all.
Really?
He shows no smartness.
You don't think he's smart at all?
No, I don't. Do you think he's smart?
Yeah, I
How
do.
so?
'Cause that stuff owns you.
We're gonna see later that Esau really has a hard life. And he is actually going to have all of this stuff anyway. So it would have been easier for him, and I would argue better than to keep his birthright. If you read any of the church fathers, they dog Esau so bad for this action. All the other stuff, they're kind of like, oh yeah, Esau was just kind of like a guy, like da-da-da. But he shouldn't have sold his birthright. It was really, really bad. Okay? So I think that Esau is actually not smart at all.
Well, I think at least he represents a minority point of view. Most people
You,
value that
well,
stuff
yeah,
in
yeah.
praise.
So, how can I say this?
Not everybody thinks that those
That's-
things are bad things.
So, what you're saying, Dave, is correct. That those things end up owning you, and they're not what life is all about.
But God don't make mistakes, okay?
God doesn't make mistakes, but that's
Esau was
also
firstborn.
what you're saying is a postmodern viewpoint.
Mhm.
So it's good. I'm not against it, but normally when we read the Bible, we're not going to read it that way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I just think he expressed his values, and his values were different than most.
His value of not valuing all of that stuff,
It wasn't as important to him as a bowl of stew.
which is not worth anything, right?
Well, it was at the time he was hungry.
Because he's hungry, but he's also like he's professing death, right? Like
I'm dying.
if you're really that exhausted, what is all of that stuff to you? Like you need to eat,
Yeah.
but like also don't tell me that there's not bread in the tent either. You know what I mean? Like you don't have to sell your birth. I'm sure there's other food that you can get. Well, probably not vegetables or fruit in the desert, but there's probably bread in the tent that you can get. Okay, so there's to make the interpretation that this is a good thing is postmodern, and you can make that interpretation, but nowhere else in the history of interpretation of the Bible is this interpreted as a good thing. Okay? Does that make sense?
Is it kinda like the widow with the 2 pennies or something, giving
The two
the
mites?
2 mites?
I would say it's the opposite of that. Because when the widow gives her 2 mites, Jesus says that is the last money that she has. And that's why she's giving it. Esau is throwing away his birthright for stew.
And even more than the stuff, it's the birthright. You get power and position. If something happens to Isaac, then Esau is in charge, not of just his double portion, but the care and the direction of this huge vast
Of his
a
mother
state
and of all, like all of
everything.
the things, right?
And they must have had like tons of servants and
Well, and it's,
people and
he's gonna
working.
get more. They're gonna get more
Yeah.
in the next chapter, so.
So when he says he despises his birthright, he probably is thinking, hey, I don't want all this pressure. I'm not that type of guy. I just want to go out and hunt. I want to do what I want to do. And maybe this is looking at his birthright. He doesn't put a lot of value on it because he sees it as, in the future, I'm going to be locked into this birthright position.
I totally appreciate and respect your viewpoints. I'm just saying that if we're trying to put a positive spin on this story,
Mhm.
we're probably interpreting it wrong. This story is not a positive story for Esau in any interpretation in the history of the Bible.
It's kinda like somebody being on drugs, they just act.
Well, okay,
Easily
but think
bothered.
about it this way though. Like when I'm hangry, I say things and do things that I would not normally do. And here we have Esau, quote unquote, acting under the influence of hunger. That's gonna make you do some things that you probably would not normally do. But I would think, no matter how hungry I was, if you came up to me and said, you have to give up your house and your car and all of your bank account in order to have a stew, I would be like, well, you can go away. right? I'm not interested. Cause like I said at the beginning, they're not equal, right? It's not like a 1 for 1. It's a 1 for whatever a lentil is.
Why didn't he just share the stew to be?
Okay, great. What is the matter with Jacob that he can't just give the boy some stew? You've got enough. What happened to this brotherly love that we're supposed to have with our brother? Like Jacob is being a brat.
I'm sure Esau, being a proficient hunter normally, I'm sure.
Normally,
Normally, he fed them many, many times.
yeah, right. So how many times has Jacob benefited from Esau's hunting? Probably more than once,
Jacob didn't hunt.
right? He was a man of the tents. So yeah, so that's not really fair either. So really, Jacob doesn't look good, nor does Esau look good. This is not good for the blessing of God.
Twins down, twins.
They're twins being twins.
But if
Down
Esau
the bottom
tried,
line, isn't just sin working its way in there with greed and stuff?
And avarice and all that stuff. Yeah? What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say, if Esau really thought he was dying, all that stuff he don't need it.
Right. Well, no, okay, so going back to what you're both saying, right? Let's pretend, and this is a big ask, okay? Let's pretend that the Bible stops here. We've got 25 chapters of the Bible. Okay? What does this say about the blessing if it ended here?
It's not important.
It's over,
Yeah.
right? Jacob and Esau are fighting, and they're being completely sinful. Boys being boys. This is not going to end well. We need other chapters to show us how the blessing works out, because right now it looks like sin is winning. Okay? Good. Alright. So that's a good segue into chapter 26. Alright. So like I said, chapter 26 could go super fast or super slow, depending on your questions, and we'll see where we're at. Okay, so I'm going to read the first 5 verses. Now there was a famine in the land, besides the former famine that was in the days of Abraham. And Isaac went to Gerar, to Abimelech, king of the Philistines. The Lord appeared to him and said, "Do not go down to Egypt. Dwell in the land of which I shall tell you. Sojourn in this land, and I will be with you, and I will bless you. For to you and to your offspring I will give all these lands, and will establish the oath that I swore to Abraham your father. I will multiply your offspring as the stars of heaven, and will give to your offspring all these lands. And in your offspring all the nations of the earth shall be blessed, because Abraham obeyed my voice and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws." Thoughts?
What happened to Abraham was repeating.
Okay, so the whole point of this chapter is for us to connect Isaac's life to Abraham's life. Okay? So just by looking at those words, can you come up with connections to Abraham's life?
Well, Abraham was told to leave.
Abraham was told to leave, Isaac leaves.
Famine.
Famine happened to Abraham, famine happened to Isaac. What else?
Abraham went to Egypt, but now.
Egypt, and now we have Egypt again, but it's going to be a little different. Okay, good. Do you want me to write these down?
No.
No? Okay. What else? We have the blessing for Abraham, we have the blessing for Isaac. Good. What else?
Multiply his offspring.
Multiply your offspring. That was one of the promises in Genesis chapter 12. We have the same thing for Isaac here.
Offspring receives land.
Offspring is going to receive land in chapter 12 and here.
Obedience.
Oh, and the obedience.
Yeah. So, just like his dad,
Amen.
he was obedient.
Amen. We have the stars in heaven, which was quoted from chapter 15 and chapter 17. All the nations of the earth shall be blessed. We're missing a big one. If Judy were here, she would get it. This is what Judy cares about,
Well, I'm seeing is the telling them to not go down to Egypt.
right?
But he's giving both of them his oath.
Good. Oath happens in both stories. Still missing a big one.
Famine?
Well, we talked about famine, but the famine is also a big one. Good.
It's not a new promise, it's,
No.
it's a,
Do you want me to give you what verse it's in?
yeah.
Verse 1.
Oh.
To the king of the Philistines.
What's his name?
Abimelech.
Abimelech.
Ah,
We've seen Abimelech before.
he's still alive?
Okay. Good. So,
That's a lot.
what happened with Abraham and Abimelech?
He told him that his wife was not his wife.
Abraham gave his wife to Abimelech to be in his harem. Okay? And so now we have Abimelech, king of the Philistines, in this again. Now, this is the question, and your question is the exact question we need to ask. He's still alive? Abraham was pretty old when he died, but Abraham was also pretty old when he had that experience with Abimelech. Right? So is it possible it's the same Abimelech? Yes. It's also possible that it's not. Okay? Abimelech, we don't know exactly what it means. It literally means my father is king. Okay? So it's possible that Abimelech is kind of like a name like Pharaoh, where it's this title of the person that is reigning over the land of the Philistines, and we don't have the name because the name doesn't really matter. It's also possible that it is the same person and that he has the same name, or that it's this the first Abimelech's son, who also called himself Abimelech. Just the second, but we don't have the second. I don't know. Whichever one of those you like better, go with that one. Does your study Bible say anything about Abimelech?
No.
Probably passes over it, right?
Yeah.
Because there's no way to know. Okay? But that's a good question. He's still alive? Possibly. It might be the same one, it might not be.
Actually, it does. Probably the son or grandson of the earlier king who bore the same name.
I said the same thing as the study Bible. How about that? Okay. So, so we had Abimelech in both stories. Okay, so like almost, if you take out all those little words like in and of, almost every other word is similar to Abraham's story. The connection between Abraham and Isaac is very, very, very strong. Okay? Another big one that we haven't talked about yet is in verse 3. The first word, sojourn. We had that a lot with Abraham. Okay? We have that here again now.
Does the word sojourn mean you're just kind of passing through? You're not going to be permanently there at this point?
Sojourn is one of the hardest words to translate into English. It theologically means resident alien, which is how theologians talk about it. But to me, that doesn't make any sense. I don't know what a resident alien is. That to me, once you put alien in there, you lost me. Okay? So it's someone who lives in a spot that they did not originate from. A transplant.
A migrant.
Migrant assumes that they're going to move on. Sojourn means you're dwelling in this place as a foreigner.
Okay. Grandparents on my father's side, both came from Poland, settled in New York.
Mm-hmm.
They were never citizens. At that time, they every year had to go to the
That's
post
right.
office and register their name.
Yep.
So they were sojourning in this
Correct.
land.
Correct. That's what that
Not total
means.
citizens,
That's
but
what that
they were
means.
living here.
Yes. And for Abraham and Isaac, we're going to see later on in the chapter, they have rights, right? Abraham bought land in Canaan, so they have land, but they're still sojourning, living somewhere else, and that happens to us, right? If you, like half of our congregation leave to Florida, right? You're sojourning in Florida, but you're really from Michigan. Or if you're really from Florida and you live in Michigan, I don't know how you, whatever you want to explain it, okay? But it's kind of the same thing, right? Okay, good. Do you have any questions about this bit? You underline or highlight all of the words that are the same with Isaac, with Abraham? Okay, good. Alright, so this next section is really, really long, and I've broken it up into kind of paragraphs so we can handle it and we don't get too confused. So I'm going to read verses 6 through 11, and we're going to talk about Abimelech a little bit more. Okay, so Isaac settled in Gerar. Great. When the men of the place asked him about his wife, he said, "She is my sister." Boo. For he feared to say my wife, thinking lest these men of the place should kill me because of Rebekah, because she was attractive in appearance. And when he had been there a long time, Abimelech, king of the Philistines, looked out of a window and saw Isaac laughing with Rebekah, his wife. So Abimelech called Isaac and said, "Behold, she is your wife. How can you say she is my sister?" Isaac said to him, "Because I thought lest I die because of her." Abimelech said, "What is this that you have done to us? One of the people might easily have lain with your wife, and you would have brought guilt upon us." So Abimelech warned all the people, saying, "Whoever touches this man or his wife shall surely be put to death." Remember that surely is a double in Hebrew, so they whoever touches his wife shall die. Moot. Deader than dead. That's good. That's a good one.
That's almost,
Deadly dead.
isn't it almost identical to what happens with Abraham?
It's okay. So exactly right. Did everybody hear that?
No.
Say it again.
It is almost identical to what Abimelech and Abraham occurred when Abimelech realized that Sarah was Abraham's wife. It's almost word for word.
Okay. I'm really glad you picked up on that. Okay. We need to do a little bit of source criticism. Okay. Have anybody ever heard of source criticism before?
No.
Good. It's awful. Okay. Don't do it. But we're just going to do it for 2 minutes. Okay. So source criticism is a whole bunch of guys that think that they are smart. Okay. And they believe, and they have written books about how it is impossible for Abraham's life to be mirrored so closely by Isaac. There is no possible way that Isaac would make the same mistakes as Abraham in almost the same exact way with the same exact words. How do we feel about that? God's involved, anything's possible. Okay? That's my least favorite argument for it. But it's true. I can't argue with you.
Well, how often in this world do we hear about people repeat repeating the same mistakes of their parents. They, you know, somebody does something horrible and you think, wow, you see that, you hear about it, you understand it, surely nobody in their family would ever repeat that behavior. Do they repeat it? Yes.
Yeah.
Over and over.
And it seems like to me, I can be wrong. I'm human. I'm a pastor, but I'm allowed to be wrong, right? When I read this story as like very culturally, Abraham and Isaac are afraid that they're going to be killed because of their wife being so pretty. I don't think that that's going to change in the 100 years between Abraham doing it and Isaac doing it. Okay? So they have the same response because they are genetically similar. Or, put it another way, to say the same thing that you did. I don't have any grandchildren, okay? But I'm assuming when you see your grandchildren, if you have them, you see similar mistakes or similar behaviors that they do that your kids did, that you're like, oh, I still don't like that. Right? And that it kind of just plays itself out. Or, for me, being the son of a father, right? I do some things exactly like my father does. My father has a tendency to be a little bit stubborn. I love you, okay? But I can be a little bit stubborn sometimes. And I think I probably get that from my father, right? That is not a great quality, but it's true. That's the way that we're wired, right? So they're almost identical. There are differences, though. And I don't know if it's super important to point out all of the differences, but let's just read it for what it is, okay? After reading that, Junie, should I read it again? Or do you remember? We're good? What are the things in here that we need to talk about? We have Abimelech again. Rebecca is really pretty, which is nice.
I don't recall in Abraham's where Abimelech looks out the window and sees,
The window is new.
the window's new, where he sees them laughing. So he realizes something's up. It's not quite a sister-brother relationship.
It's not okay. Can you describe that a little bit? Why can a sister and brother not laugh together?
They can't type. It's a different, your body language says
With
something
like a
different.
husband and wife, it's more of a
Intimate.
flirt, more of an intimacy that you can just tell. I don't know. But this becomes more clear when we remember what Isaac means. Does anybody remember what Isaac means? Laughter. So the Hebrew literally says Isaac was Isaacing. The guy that means laughter was laughing. Okay? Now, laugh can also be, oh gosh, what's that term? I won't remember it because my head's hurts. But it's that term that can be sexualized. So laugh in Hebrew can also mean more of like a sexual thing. Okay? If you use it as the idiom that way. Right? Oh, they were laughing. You know, okay. Which would make more sense. Right? That he sees them doing kissing or laughing or flirting kind of things that you're not going to do with your sister.
At least you hope
It's
not
like
to.
sleeping together. Well, I mean, they say that term, but
Right.
sleeping's not what causes the problem.
Right, exactly right, exactly. Hence the sheaves and all that stuff. So you're right. The laughter is new, but it's also a direct connection to who Isaac is, which we've also seen with Jacob. So we're seeing as Genesis goes on that names mean something and they're hyper important to who you are. Okay? Did all of you look up what your names mean yet? That's your homework for over Christmas, to look up what your names mean. Okay?
Mine's easy.
What?
Vicky.
Victory.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
I've always known that.
Victory in Christ.
I'm sure it's up to
That's
you.
good. All right.
I was gonna say Dorcas or.
What did you say?
I said, I'm sure mine is something
Move on.
good. These,
Like
these
doofus.
things, Dorcas.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, but later on in verse 10, like this is really important. Abimelech said, "What is this that you have done to
Us.
us?" How do we interpret that?
He's thinking of his whole,
The whole people.
the people.
So he hasn't just done this to Abimelech, but Isaac has literally wronged the entire Philistine nation.
Because it's not just Abimelech. He then says one of the people could have lain.
One of the people. So, again, our patriarch doesn't really look that great. It seems like this pagan king has more morals than Isaac. That's not good. God can use anybody for whatever purpose he wants. Okay. Good. Anything else? Oh, did you guys notice the behold? He's very startled. Behold! And there's actually another word in the Hebrew that is not translated into the English. It says, surely behold. Like he's even more taken aback that this is happening. Okay? Also, the how, and the how can you say? How is a lot stronger in Hebrew than it is in English. So it's like, how then can you do this to us? Right? Like he's so astonished. Okay? Good. So verses 12 through 16. And Isaac sowed in that land and reaped in the same year 100-fold. And the Lord blessed him, and the man became rich and gained more and more until he became very wealthy. He had possessions of flocks and herds and many servants, so that the Philistines envied him. Now the Philistines had stopped and filled with earth all the wells that his father's servants had dug in the days of Abraham his father. And Abimelech said to Isaac, "Go away from us, for you are much mightier than we are." That's really bad English, right? To end it, then have to put in the R.
Why would they fill in the wells?
What do you think? What's the purpose of filling in a well?
Can't use it, don't stay there, go away.
It's trying to get them to go away,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
I mean, when you think about it, you're living in this like pretty deserty area. Wells are really important. Maybe it's not a good idea to do that. Maybe you're gonna shoot yourself in the foot by doing that, but they do it anyway. That's what they're doing. Okay? Something in Hebrew that you won't be able to tell is in verse 13. The words rich, gained more, and wealthy all come from the same word in Hebrew. So it's going over that concept. It gives that concept 3 times in that verse. Sometimes the English changes it to make it more interesting for us. So really it should say, and the man gained more and then he gained more and more until he gained more. Okay? Good. Verses 17 through 22. So Isaac departed from there and encamped in the valley of Gerar and settled there. And Isaac dug again the wells of water that had been dug in the days of Abraham his father, which the Philistines had stopped after the death of Abraham. And he gave them the names that his father had given them. But when Isaac's servants dug in the valley and found there a well of spring water, the herdsmen of Gerar quarreled with Isaac's herdsmen, saying, "The water is ours." So he called the name of the well Esek, because they contended with him. And they dug another well, and they quarreled over that one also. So he called the name Sitnah. And he moved from there and dug another well, and they did not quarrel over it. So he called its name Rehoboth, saying, "For now the Lord has made room for us, and we shall be fruitful in the land." Anything of importance here? It may not seem like it, but there is.
They're taking over.
Who is taking over?
Isaac is taking over.
Isaac is reclaiming the land that the Philistines took. Not the same way that Joshua did, right? Not by killing them all and destroying all their cities or anything. But he's doing it by just taking the water that was given to Abraham as his birthright. Okay?
Is there special meanings to the names that he gave them all?
I am so glad you asked that question. Yes, there is. So usually, especially in Genesis, when you have a name, it will give you most of the meaning of the name immediately following the name. So Esek means to contend with, in the bad way. Okay? And Sitnah is to quarrel.
So names mean something, you know, it's-
Well, they do, and of course, okay, so you think about it this way, right? There are 66 books in the Bible, 39 in the Old Testament, 27 in the New Testament. Different writers have different purposes, right? We believe, because we're a little bit more traditional than some, that Moses wrote Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, called the Pentateuch, right? When you read the Pentateuch, Moses' purpose is to teach the Israelites where they come from and what their purpose on earth is. Okay? So in the Pentateuch, especially in Genesis and Exodus, names mean something. When you get further on, some of the authors don't put importance on the names. And the best example I can give you for that is the book of Luke that we're studying right now in the other Bible study. Luke has more names than other Gospels or other books of the Bible, but Luke does not put the importance of the names in his Gospel. Matthew does. And it becomes actually really important for the book of Matthew to know what the names mean. But Mark, Luke, and John barely has any names at all. It's just Jesus and his disciples kicking it through Galilee, right? So it's the way that the style of the writer puts the purpose in the name is going to be different in different books of the Bible. For example, the book of Hosea, names are hyper important in that because the two children, the two boys that Hosea has with his prostitute wife, that is in order to teach the Israelites what their problem is. And the whole purpose of that book are the names of their two kids. Okay? But you're like in the book of Joel that we just did, names weren't that important in that book. And there were names, like we had Tyre and Sidon and Philistia. Those meanings did not come into the interpretation of that book. So yes, names do mean something, but they're going to be more and less important based off of the book you're reading. In Genesis, top 5 books of the Bible for names meaning something. Okay? So yes, I think that it's a general biblical theology thing that we're able to say that names mean something. But I just don't want you to read Lamentations and be like, I thought you said names meant something and I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, good. The whole purpose of this chapter is verse 22. Okay? And he moved on from there, dug another well, and they did not quarrel over it, so he called the name of Rehoboth, which means to make room or to expand. Okay? For now the Lord has made room for us, and we shall be fruitful in the land. So the only thing that Isaac wants to do is follow the commandment of the Lord to be fruitful and multiply from Genesis chapter 1. Okay? Get it, got it good? We can finish this chapter. Okay. From there he went up to Beersheba, and the Lord appeared to him the same night and said, I am the God of Abraham your father, fear not, for I am with you and will bless you and multiply your offspring for my servant Abraham's sake. So he built an altar there and called upon the name of the Lord and pitched his tent there. And there Isaac's servants dug a well. Great. Then Abimelech went to him from Gerar with Ahuzzath, his advisor, and Pichol, the commander of his army. Isaac said to them, Why have you come to me, seeing that you hate me, and have sent me away from you? They said, We see plainly that the Lord has been with you. So we said, Let there be a sworn pact between us, between you and us, and let us make a covenant with you, that you will do us no harm, just as we have not touched you, and have done to you nothing but good, and have sent you away in peace. You are now the blessed of the Lord. So he made them a feast, and they ate and drank. And in the morning they rose early and exchanged oaths. And Isaac sent them on their way, and they departed from him in peace. That same day Isaac's servants came and told him about the well that they had dug, and said to them, We have found water. He called it Shibah. Therefore the name of the city is Beersheba to this day. When Esau was 40 years old, he took Judith, the daughter of Beeri the Hittite, to be his wife, and Basemath, the daughter of Elon the Hittite, and they made life bitter for Isaac and Rebekah. Okay? So, Abimelech came to his senses. Hey, by the way, you're blessed by God. I think that's a really good thing. I don't want God to be against me. Let's make a pact. By the way, we've treated you really, really well. Have they?
Even though we filled in your wells.
Even though we filled in all your wells. We want you to be nice to us. So they swear a pact, and it seems to be all good. Meanwhile, dun dun dun, what's Esau doing? Marrying outside of the covenant promise. So what is that going to tell us about Esau and his decision making? It's not good. It's going to lead him down the wrong path. Okay? And he takes two wives. We're going to see that Jacob gets 4, but whatever. Yes, I argue that, yeah, when you're looking to contrast them right now in this chapter, Esau does not look great, and Jacob is looking better. But then Jacob's going to look really awful in the next chapter. So we have to be really careful when we say that. Okay? So, comments, questions, concerns, 25 and 26. Jacob is still, and yet, he is still blessed. Okay? Get it, got it good? This is our last Bible study of the year, which is hard to believe. A week from today is the day after because I love you, but, we're gonna be doing other things. So the next time we meet, I believe, is January 8th or 9th, whatever that Thursday is.
9.
And, we will finish Genesis this year, this upcoming year, which is really exciting, and start with Exodus. So my goal for 2025 is to get through Exodus chapter 15 by this time next year. Okay? We may or may not get there, we'll see. It's not a big deal if we don't. But we're just gonna we started at the beginning of the Old Testament, and from now until we finish the Old Testament, we're just gonna go through the Old Testament. This is the Old Testament Bible study. Okay?
Nice.
Right? Isn't that fun? Exodus is so great. Oh my gosh. What?
I'll drink to that.
Oh, yes. Coffee for everybody. Amen. Okay, so let's say the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not to temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory,